If you enjoy this video, please consider giving a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. And if you have any ideas for future videos, share them in the comments section below. This original bedtime story is made possible thanks to Slumberland patrons. If you would like to support this channel, you can find Patreon details in the description and on my channel homepage. Take a moment to close your eyes and allow yourself to listen along to this adult bedtime story. And with your eyes closed, as you listen along to me talking in the background, you can begin to comfortably drift off asleep. And as you comfortably drift off asleep, so my voice can go with you. And as my voice goes with you, I don't know whether relaxation will begin to spread from the head down or the feet up, or perhaps it'll start somewhere else in your body, maybe in the hands or the arms, or the chest or the stomach. Maybe the relaxation will radiate out or flow through you. And as you drift asleep, just have a sense of a prince in a palace. And this prince has a generally easy life. And he's just chilling out in the palace, in front of a roaring fire. And out the palace windows he can see snow, he can see a blizzard. And there's a breeze that gets into the palace, that goes down the corridors. So he stays in this room, in front of that roaring log fire, with a high ceiling, books all around the walls, beautiful rugs on the floor, flickering lights at the walls. And as he relaxes this evening in front of this fire, his mind wanders and drifts into a daydream, into a reverie, with that crackling sound in the fire and the flickering lights, the way it bounces and dances on the walls. And then after a few moments, he hears a thud at the door, followed by a second and a third thud. And then the latch goes and the door heavily swings open and creaks. "Sir, sir," the man who's burst in says, "there's a dragon terrorizing the land. You'll have to come quick, for only a prince can defeat a dragon." So the prince jumps up, dashes through the room, out the door. Echoing footsteps heard as he runs down the corridor, and gets changed and gets his armour on, picks up his heavy sword, and runs out of the palace. And from the top of the steps outside the front of the palace, He can see off in the distance over to the village, over to the land that's owned by his parents. He can see a dragon through the snow, diving down, breathing fire on the town, before flying up, spinning round, diving back down, breathing fire again. The prince runs and jumps on his horse, gallops down towards the gate, out of the gate, starts galloping along the mud road towards the town. He pulls his visor down on his helmet as he charges down into the town, up over a bridge, across a river, round winding roads, dodging falling wooden masonry, before he gets so close to where the dragon is that he can start to feel the heat coming off of the burning buildings. And there's no way from down here that he can get to that dragon. So he climbs up a church which bells ringing, climbing up the outside of the church, and gets to the top as they're still ringing the bell to try and warn people to get away. He gets the bow off his back, puts an arrow in the bow, draws the bow back, tilts the bow at an angle. He can feel the shaking tension in his arm as he holds that bow drawn. He tracks the dragon, and then tracks slightly in front of the dragon with the bow. And fires. The bow flies through the sky and just bounces off the side of the dragon. The prince gets another bow from his back, another arrow from his back, puts it in the bow, draws it back, tracks again. He's got to aim for the throat, the only point on the dragon that's vulnerable. Tracks the dragon, can feel his hands shaking, his muscles burning as he holds that bow pulled tight like that, and then fires and just nicks the dragon's throat. The dragon lets out a roar and a breath of fire and turns towards the church. It swoops down towards the church. The prince swings around into the bell tower, jumps up into the bell, holding on to the centre of the bell, as the dragon breathes fire straight onto the church, straight across the bell tower, and the wooden structure catches fire and starts to burn. And the bell begins to get warm, and as the dragon passes over, he drops out of the bell tower, drops out from underneath the bell, and starts running down the stairs to get out of the burning tower. And the bell starts collapsing above him, and he can see it falling through the wood, crashing floor to floor above him as he sprints down and he rushes down, desperate to make it out of the tower and out to see where the dragon's gone. He reaches the bottom and has to dive out the way just as the bell crashes down where he was moments ago. And he rolls and runs out of the church and sees the dragon flying off over towards the woods, over towards the forest. So he runs back to his horse, jumps on his horse, and gallops off towards the forest. Galloping and rushing towards the forest, horse's hooves thundering along the mud path, and then into the forest, aware of rustling leaves, aware of the feeling of the wind on his face as he gallops through the forest, hearing that dragon roar from time to time overhead, getting more distant all the time. And after some time galloping, the horse needs to slow down. He can't keep the horse going at this speed. So he slows down to a walk for a while he still listens out for that dragon. And as he's walking on his horse through the forest, so he can hear sounds of the forest, hear rustling leaves, see the way that the light dances through the leaves and the branches. They can smell the smell of the deep forest, hear animals and birds, and the sound of running water in the river which comes from the nearby mountains. And he follows the distant roar of that dragon and the faint swoosh sound of the wings. And he finds his way out the far side of the forest, at the foot of the mountains. And he sees up the mountain there's a cave. And he can hear the sound of the dragon in that cave and the rumble of the mountain. So he leaves his horse, dismounts, and on foot he starts climbing the mountain. Easy going at first, and then it gets steeper and more jagged, and he has to climb some vertical areas. And he can feel his muscles burning with effort as he focuses on climbing to that dragon. And he gets above the tree line, he can see the forest below as he approaches the cloud line, where occasionally clouds reach the mountain before sharply pushing up and condensing and having snow fall. And the snow out here is different to the snow that was falling back over the land. Out here the air is cooler up the mountain. And the flakes feel sharper and land faster. And the prince climbs through the cloud layer, continuing up towards that cave, with everything becoming noticeably colder, seeing his breath in front of him, feeling that cool air with each in-breath through the nostrils, being very aware of the weight of his armor. And the prince reaches the entrance to the cave. He can hear in the distance in the cave the echoey rumble of the dragon. the thud of its footsteps. He sees crushed bones on the ground, skeletons of knights and previous people that have tried to take on the dragon. And one of the skeletons has the most beautiful armor you can imagine, and a highly reflective silver shield. And he picks up the silver shield, and it's incredibly lightweight. He doesn't know what it's made of, but it seems sturdy. It seems like it'll do the job. And the prince walks into the cave, noticing very quickly how his footsteps begin to echo as he goes from the entrance just a short few steps inside. And the prince lights a torch and carries that torch with him as the cave gets darker and darker. And he quietly walks deeper and deeper into the cave. He has a certain level of relaxed alertness as he walks deeper and deeper, listening for the dragon. And the cave at places begins to narrow. He notices a slight breeze from time to time, making his torch flicker and dance, and noticing the dancing light on the walls and the ceiling of the flickering flame. And then the cave opens up into a chamber, and the prince sees this huge dragon in there. He tries to sneak as close as he can to the dragon. He gets his bow while he hides behind a huge rock, puts an arrow into the bow, draws it back. As he draws it back, there's a creak from the bow. The dragon notices, turns to face the rock. The prince fires, managing to get the arrow into the side of the dragon's neck. The dragon screams and breathes out fire, while the prince ducks down tightly in behind the rock, watching the fire pass over the top of his head as he holds the shielding close to him. He then hears the dragon run and thud, coming towards him. So he runs from behind the rock, climbs up onto some rocks around the side of the cave, around the side of this chamber, and jumps up and runs and manages to get above the height of the dragon. The dragon lunges up and bites at him, managing to dislodge a few rocks from under the prince's feet. The prince manages to hang on and stay in place. The dragon can't fly because there's no room for him to take off in here. So he leaps up, biting at the prince, trying to get the prince. And then his throat turns red as he breathes fire, ready to breathe out over the prince. The prince ducks down behind his silver shield as the dragon breathes fire and the shield glows red. and the front of the shield becomes white hot, while the back of the shield is barely warm at all, and he can see the fire beating around the side of the shield. He then jumps down in front of the dragon. The dragon takes a swipe at him, he blocks it with his sword and gets thrust across the ground. The dragon then tries to stamp on him. He sticks his sword upright, and the dragon's foot lands on the sword, giving him just a moment's time to roll out from under the foot as the sword gets cracked and broken and bent. The prince runs around and climbs up high on the other side of the cave, jumps down onto the dragon's back, grabs one of his arrows from behind him, clings onto the dragon's neck with his legs around the neck. Then lets himself drop and swing round to the front of the dragon's neck. Grabs a second arrow and thrusts both arrows deep into the neck of the dragon. As the dragon screams and breathes out fire and shakes its neck violently from side to side, the prince hangs on with all the strength in his legs. As green blood starts squirting out from the neck, and the neck's glowing red as the dragon breathes fire, before eventually it staggers, whacks its head on the side of the cave, staggers some more, and slumps down to the ground with a loud crash. Just as he was slumping down, his neck's falling down. The prince manages to get most of himself out of the way. It lands across his leg and he has to just shuffle, and he struggles and he uses his other leg to try and push on the neck to try and pull his leg out. In the end, he manages to pull his leg out from within the armour, which hasn't been damaged. And with one leg uncovered with no armour on, the prince staggers out of the cave, back out to the daylight, and begins his journey back to the palace, where he knows he's going to get a positive reception from the town, from his parents, the king and queen, for saving the land once again. Where I look forward to his hard-earned rest back in front of the fire, and so he continues his journey back to the palace on his horse, just trotting along, getting some well-earned relaxation, looking forward to getting a good night's sleep. As you drift comfortably and deeply asleep, now all night long, sleeping soundly all night long.